Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Molecules to Markets. I'm Steve Wilkerson, your host, and this is presented to you by ResourceWise. Now, I want everybody to come to our blog and check out the articles that we're writing in my previous episodes that we have released. And I want to thank everybody for joining us, as I believe that I've gotten a lot of support, and I just really appreciate everybody for joining in and listening because we are definitely in a critical time of these markets. And so, with ResourceWise, we're going to be bringing you critical alerts, critical updates on how these prices are responding to what's going on in the Middle East. And as this process continues, we're going to be right there looking at all the markets granularly and giving the best intel that we can on the specific regions and prices. Now, let's dive on in. So, one thing that we want to do is we need to differentiate the two different events that have occurred back in 21 and now. So, when EU was in the hard times with the Ukrainian Russian conflict, TTF exploded. At its max, it got to 250 euros per megawatt hour. And that was an insane increase compared to where it was sticking to about 30 euros per megawatt hour. Now, what we've seen since the Iranian conflict has started is that TTF has spiked, but nowhere near what happened in the Ukrainian war situation. So that's a major difference between now and then. The other part that's becoming very clear is that Asia, especially the Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia regions, are going to be mostly affected because of the cracker spreads, the naphtha cracker spreads, that is now going to be withheld in the Strait of Hormuz until those risk wartime premiums can be issued. So one thing that Asia is going to be dealing with are their BTX spreads, their benzene, toluene, xylene spreads. Those aromatics are going to be heavily affected due to the crackers being shut down in those regions, those naphtha crackers that we've talked about. Benzene derivatives like ABS is a big one, phenol, acetone, cyclohexane, nylon, MDIs, and polyurethanes. Toluene is going to be heavily affected in the Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia regions. TDI, paints and coatings, high octane gas blending is going to be a big issue as well. So we'll see gas prices going up in Northeast and Southeast Asia. Now, China and the Asian regions accounts for 40 million tons of PX exports per year. China alone has 35 to 40 million tons of PX capacity. South Korea, it adds another 5 to 6 million tons of PX capacity per year. Asia Pacific also accounts for 75 to 80% of global PX demand. Now, if naphtha supply drops by about 30 to 50%, we should see PX production fall by about that same amount. That's potentially 15 to 25 million tons of PX production that is going to be curtailed. Now, whether or not that production can come back, it will be determined by how bad this situation gets. So, as we mentioned, we're going to have a lot of issues on that PXT chain, especially in the PX department and on that polyester chain. So stick with us, and we will provide you with updates as those pricing changes, as the situation changes there in Asia. Now, looking granularly on some of these markets, UPR is a good one to look at. Now, the reason why we want to look at UPR is because, unlike a lot of other chemicals, prices have come down in the last couple of years. UPR was able to maintain its higher price. Some other products that were also like this, like polyurethanes were one, HDPE was another one. And so some of these downstream products were able to maintain their margins and not lose too much market pricing. Now, with the cost increasing so dramatically, especially on products like DEG and OX, because of aromatics and because of the production of ethylene being cut in certain regions, we're going to see that cost structure start to push up. And so that's one that we want everybody to keep an eye on as how UPR is going to respond, seeing it already had an elevated price. And now we're going to watch the cost structure push up on that particular product. This is a luxury product. I believe that UPR is heavily correlated with demand. And so we use UPR as a good way to say, okay, the economy is doing semi well, quasi well. And so, thus, now that we're having cost increases, what do we see into the demand? Is demand destruction occurring, or is the market able to handle these cost fluctuations? Now, going back into the differentiation between this scenario and the previous scenario that we had in 21, is that Europe is a heavy importer of products like HDPE. The EU imports roughly 30% of its polyethylene from the Middle East. Now, when it comes to how much material is actually going to be affected during this process, it's going to be a lot smaller because they're going to be able to reroute some material to the western side, which is the Red Sea versus the Strait of Hormuz. So what we're really going to see is that 3.1 million tons of polyethylene that's currently not going to be able to be shipped through the Strait of Hormuz. About 30% of that is actually going to be able to be redirected to the Red Sea. So there's going to be lots of contingency plans that occur. When we look at other products like methanol, a lot of folks came to me and they said, well, what am I seeing on the methanol side of things? Well, we did not see a knee-jerk reaction on methanol. And the reason why we didn't see a knee-jerk reaction on methanol is because Asia still has that coal to methanol production. It also has coal to MEG and also has coal to polyethylene as well. The issue with the coal to olefins production is that it's not as clean, right? It's a little bit dirtier. It's not quite as of quality, but it's still something that China has been able to supplement its production with. We're also going to see that on the glycol space, where we're going to have the coal to MEG production. And we should also see that with the crude to chemical concept, as we do know that shadow fleet carriers are still bringing Iranian oil out of China, to China. So now let's talk about the now or never situation. How it's now or never for the Trump administration and Iran to come to an agreement. Now, Israel already stated that this is going to last another 4 to 6 weeks, which, is really going to test these markets very heavily. But I do believe both of them are going to do their best to come to an agreement. The main reason is that if we do get to a global crisis, a global economical meltdown, Iran is going to lose its ability to negotiate at all, whatever they can to prevent a global economic crisis. The main reason is that the IRGC, Iran's military, really has no other footing besides the ability to hold the economy for ransom. Now, at the same time, the Trump administration, the US and Israel, are going to start going after Iran's infrastructure because to Iran, this is a doomsday scenario, right? If the economy gets so bad, then there will be nothing left for the IRGC to even maintain. I believe the United States will go after every single one of their leaders and every single one of the members of the political party. So that means it's a now or never situation. Get the Strait secured, get product flowing out of there, and start negotiations now and in this conflict as soon as possible to get trade flows moving back again. Now, as we see the markets change in Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, there's going to be a lot of products that we want you guys to be in touch with us. We think in particular epoxy resins is going to be a big one. We're going to have a lot of downstream derivatives. I mentioned polyethylene. We're going to have propylene is going to be a big issue. And we're going to see lots of co-products that aren't going to be able to be supplemented with Chinese alternative production. So stick with us, resource-wise, check for articles, check for alerts. And I'm Steve Wilkerson, and I'll see you next week with Molecules to Markets. Thank you. Let it run out.